the fate of the witnesses who testified in the impeachment inquiry and other government officials who were involved in it and know what happened is a pretty daunting list at this point in terms of where are they now. Kurt Volker was the U.S. envoy to Ukraine. He resigned right before his impeachment testimony. Not only is he out of a job, but the U.S. no longer has an envoy to Ukraine at all. They got rid of the whole job. Fiona Hill left her job as the top Russia official at the National Security Council just before the scandal burst into view. Her successor in that job, Tim Morrison, who also testified, quit that job at the National Security Council literally the night before he testified in the impeachment inquiry. Energy Secretary Rick Perry quit his job as a cabinet official as soon as the scandal became public. National Security Advisor John Bolton either quit or was fired as National Security Advisor, just as the held-up Ukraine military aid was released. We still don't know the full story of John Bolton in this scandal, but the president is now reportedly trying to block his book from being published. And according to one report, the president is reportedly exploring the possibility of ginning up some sort of criminal prosecution against John Bolton. Marie Yovanovitch, of course, was recalled and fired as U.S. ambassador to Ukraine at the height of the scandal and as part of it. During the impeachment trial, she officially retired from government service altogether. The veteran U.S. ambassador who was sent to replace her at the Ukraine embassy, Bill Taylor, was also suddenly removed from his post in Ukraine in the middle of the impeachment investigation. He's now returned to retirement. Even Jennifer Williams, who worked in Vice President Mike Pence's office and testified about his role in the scandal. She's now gone from the White House, departing in the middle of the impeachment trial and suddenly going to work at CENTCOM instead. Alexander Vindman and his brother, who worked as an ethics lawyer at the National Security Council, they were both frog-marched out of the White House today and fired from their White House positions, followed soon thereafter by EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland, today fired as well. Anybody else want to speak up? Anybody else want to testify truthfully under oath as to what they saw or what they know? On October 20th, 1973, Richard Nixon actually did succeed in firing the Watergate special counsel. But the reason we remember that night as the Saturday Night Massacre and not just the night that Nixon fired Archibald Cox is because high-ranking presidential appointees in the chain of command who were told to carry out the president's orders said no. They said they wouldn't do it, and they resigned themselves on principle instead. And so instead of one man being killed off that night, one man who was an aggravation to the president, which was an act that Nixon knew would create some blowback, but nothing he figured he couldn't handle. Instead of that, instead of him skipping some little rock across a pond and being willing to withstand the ripples, with those principled resignations of his own appointees who refused to help him do it, Nixon ended up setting off a depth charge in that pond. And the country rose up about it in outrage because of the moral example set by his own appointees who would not go along. This time, who will stand up and do the same? Anyone?
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.